Hi, everyone. This is Katie McCoy. I'm a product designer on the AI framework team. And today I'm going to talk to you a bit about a recent pivot that happened. So last week, some designers got shuffled around. And I think that UX showcases are often like a retrospective looking back on a project. And this one is in the very early stages. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what my current work is and my current plan, but it's all very early stages. So as I'm talking, I've left some questions for you all in the agenda. Feel free to answer them. But yeah, basically, 2 weeks ago, I worked on very specific AI features attached to an engineering team. And with the shuffle that happened, I'm now going to work more on design patterns for AI features. And so when I got this assignment, I started to think about that's a very broad topic and it can be sliced in many ways and how to best add value and what does that actually mean? What is the output? So this was the verbatim from this issue where we had the shuffle. And I take from the verbatim around like design patterns, like the long-term vision is that GitLab has a comprehensive set of guidelines, design patterns, and tools to ensure cohesive and high quality user experience of AI features across the organization. That's still quite a broad statement. So like for myself, like what does that actually mean? It can be very literal things like what does an AI button look like? What kind of icon does it have? What UI copy? Versus more like abstract things like how does the user know what context the AI has? What are the AI solutions that exist? And when should I use which one? And super abstract. So how do I identify a user problem that would be helped by AI strengths? So these are quite like a broad slice. And I was thinking about how to frame up my work. I put this constraint on myself. We have many AI features that are in the process of maturing in the near term. So I'm focusing on very literal things that help us today. We've moved really fast in the AI space, and I think we need to establish some table stakes things first. So I gave some examples here, like something that helps us today that's very literal is that Duo features have a consistent call to action. And the secondary focus might be something like guidelines for what to do when the AI does not produce a result that the user is happy with, like the special considerations that AI features do not deliver a predictable output. So some patterns. So these are the kind of things that I'll initially be focusing on. And I started thinking about like if my consumer or my customer is almost like GitLab staff and the user like benefits from GitLab staff having an easier time designing AI features. There's quite a lot of ways to slice this as well. I think we have some gaps in the organization in terms of like how do we identify which AI opportunity to pursue? As Austin asked at the UX call yesterday, like what is GitLab's advantage? Like what is our niche? How are we going to find our spot in the AI landscape? Evaluating AI solutions against other solutions in the ideation phase, like when is AI appropriate? When is another form of automation appropriate? Measures of success, like how do we know that the AI feature is having an impact? Like what is good enough? But the one that I'm going to focus on, again, because it's near term, what helps us today, is helping make it easier to deliver consistent and predictable UX of AI features. So yeah, the goal is just consistency, reducing the cognitive load for users, predictability, but also efficiency for designers that they can quickly assemble interfaces and focus on the larger problems because the basics are covered. And the scalability, we as an organization are putting a lot of emphasis on AI. So each designer coming up with a bespoke solution is not scalable. And also the quality. So design for AI has some special considerations, and we need to make sure that those are catered for and that we have best practices. So in terms of like examples of problems to solve, I rank these from like most easy to solve to least easy to solve. The most easy to solve one is like small elements being inconsistent. Example, calls to action buttons. Here are some screenshots. I did a little audit of what the feature is called in our documentation marketing site, and then the call to action, even like which icon it uses, like we can be more consistent. The next level up in extraction in terms of patterns is inconsistency in flows. For example, that the AI writes in a text editor for me. We have a couple of flows that touch that, like it would be easier if we could standardize that a bit where possible. I understand that some features will have idiosyncrasies. And then the most abstract is inconsistency in abstract patterns, e.g. The AI explains something to me. This is like a super rough categorization, but I'm interested if we can have best practices or guidelines of like when the AI is co-creating something with the user, what needs to happen, like what kind of feedback loop, things like this. So it would be cool to like see if it's possible to standardize this, or at least have like a checklist of considerations for designers working on these kind of flows to think about, like, have you built in a feedback mechanism? Is it possible for the user to fine-tune the result that they get from the AI when they're not happy with it? Things like this. And then another category of problems to solve that falls under this umbrella is through the heuristic evaluation. I see that similar pain points exist across multiple AI features. And it would be interesting to see if we could solve those problems once and then people could benefit from them rather than each individual team trying to solve the problem. And last thing around like organizational efficiency and scalability. These are just like a small, small focus is just like, how would a designer at GitLab know what's going on in AI? How do they know what features exist, what other people are working on? Is it easy for them to get AI on their GDK? No, it's not. So that's also just like a small focus. So my long-term vision is that designers can consume like patterns from a pattern library. And pattern library may not be the appropriate term. I'm still trying to find the right words for it. And this is super vague because I need to figure out like what's the right level of detail. But what I mean by a pattern library is a pattern library has different anatomy. It could be also maybe called like a template or a sticker sheet. So it's not meant to be like dogmatic, and it's not meant to be like a design system, maybe if a design system is like atoms, molecule, and organism, this is more like organism. It's like showing the entire flow, and the entire flow is made up of different like components. So we have a broad interaction pattern, like user is chatting with an AI in natural language, or the AI is explaining something to the user. And then we have subcomponents like how does the user know that the AI is still working on giving them an answer? Like collections of elements, like when AI generated content is embedded in the page, how do we signal that it's AI generated? What language do we use? What iconography? What actions are available? Like, is it possible that the user can regenerate this content? Things like this. So this is super high level. That's like literal visual like UI elements and a little bit of UX. But there's also like another layer of abstraction that could be like added to this. Like more abstract questions, like when is it appropriate for the AI to do something without the user triggering it? When is an AI chat the most appropriate solution? When is it not? What steps are available when the user gets output that the AI is not happy with? So I think we need to first focus on some of the more simple, small scope table stakes things, like just making UI elements consistent, because we need that now. And it's also like simple-ish to solve. But maybe the long-term vision is, in addition to like a visual pattern library or sticker sheet or starting point for these AI experiences, we can ask some of those more abstract fundamental questions. And so the short-term steps that I'm thinking about, and very open to feedback on this, it would be interesting to have a group ideation session for all of the designers who work on AI features on common usability pain points. Because we saw a number of very similar pain points across AI features. And it would be good to highlight that this is like a problem that exists across the organization, which means the user who's like navigating through our product is like stumbling on the same hurdles in different features. And it would be interesting to solve these similar problems together. And by ideation session, I just mean just chuck together some wireframes. In my work in progress thing here, the focus area that I was thinking for an ideation session is setting the right expectations. So like, how does the user know what the feature is going to do? How is it going to help them? What does the user expect is going to happen when they use the feature? Things like this, because some of the features kind of stumbled on that hurdle. And then the outcome of such an exercise is that the individual feature teams have at least the beginnings of a solution to explore, and we can all help each other and learn from each other. And then also we may be able to synthesize the results into some kind of pattern or guideline, so that when new AI features are being developed, that like setting the right expectations is really at like the forefront as we start the design process for a new feature. And like side effect, also the designers on the AI will have more awareness of the different AI features. So that's big project number one, or big piece of work number one. The other one that I'm thinking about is auditing all of the existing AI features, highlighting the gaps and documenting the patterns. So when I say gaps, that can be something like how does a user provide GitLab with feedback about this AI feature, or what happens when the user doesn't have the right level of access to use the AI feature to its fullest extent. There are some examples here. For example, yeah, like what context does the AI have to provide its answers? These could all be things that could be roughly standardized. And the outcome of this would be the first step towards a pattern library. I think starting with the easy stuff because it's smaller scoped, like the call to action. Being able to identify which flows could be patternized. For example, AI writes in a text editor. And yeah, highlighting missing guidance. And the reason why I want to patternize these flows is if we have a flow of like users interacting with an AI in a text editor, we could run usability testing on such a flow. And if all of the flows follow this pattern, then they all benefit when we make an improvement. Like it's like the consumers benefit from like the best usability. And then some smaller projects, and this wouldn't be the majority of my focus, is just improving designer collaboration and awareness, like having a central place for Figmas to live, making it easier to get AI on the GDK. And we have these office hours, like how do we make them more useful? But yeah, those are my initial thoughts of how I would slice this work. But as I said, it's very early days, so I'm very open to feedback. So I'll stop sharing now and just have a look at the agenda questions. So I asked a question first. Those working on AI features, what's inefficient or difficult about designing AI features like GitLab? Austin, do you want to vocalize your remark?
Yeah. So as I'm just kind of getting my feet wet in this area, what I'm coming to realize is I've, for a while, had the benefit of just like designing within the walled garden of our web app. Just the scope of the problems that I was trying to solve were there. because the AI functionality we've given to users is beyond just that, there's a lot more that you have to be contextually aware of and figure out how to design and solve problems in those systems that are unfamiliar to me. A good example would be just like we have an extension available for two different types of editors, VS Code and JetBrains, and their IDEs. VS Code has its own UX guidelines. Like there's an entirely different design system to follow there. We can port stuff in as best we can, but then there's still like a natural language to try and fit that product. And the same kind of exists for JetBrains, except it's not as transparent what those are. Um, and in terms of our own world, like the sites that we don't typically see, but I know a few designers have worked on in the past, like the customer portal, Switchboard. These aren't GitLab.com, but they are a critical part of the user journey of getting that add-on, getting that license. That's their first introduction to it, getting from that point to getting into GitLab, to getting everything connected. Like it's an entire ecosystem. And learning those different parts of the ecosystem is hard. And it gets even more challenging when you start like delineating the different types of setups, self-managed versus SaaS and dedicated, that still counts as SaaS, but you kind of catch my point of like, there are different constraints and like options, which is just tough to kind of wrap your head around and know like, how do you approach it? Just because we've traditionally, at least in my experience, just been trained to solve problems in our web app. Like we don't have a dedicated iOS or Android app. So you don't have to deal with the fact that like, oh, I can run slash commands in the web app, but I can't do it in the iOS app. Like we never went that way. So this is kind of like that first time we're going beyond just our simple flow inside the web app itself and saying there's a bigger user experience we have to consider and meet that user where they're at, whether it's a customer portal or in their extension. And that's hard.
Totally agree.
Becca, did you want to talk some more about the point you're getting down?
Yeah, so my biggest challenge, I would say, with explain and resolve vulnerability is it's hard to know which AI features are currently in the product, what each feature's maturity plan is, both from a functionality and UI point of view. So as we work on taking explain and resolve vulnerability to GA, it'd be good to have one place to see where other features are, like what patterns and interactions are currently used, where I can view where each are headed, and how might we be able to work together to inspire each other's design directions. Because right now, I mean, I'm somewhat familiar with, some of the features that are out there, but I then need to either go into the UX AI channel and, ask a general question about like, hey, is anybody doing anything like this? Or like, we don't really give each other frequent updates. And I mean, Katie, to your point, like you said, there are different ways. We were using like purple as a color for a bit, to denote AI. And then Jeremy came up with that awesome Tanuki sparkle icon that's associated with AI, that it's still being implemented in different ways. And there's actually an ongoing issue where Katie and I are collaborating on, as we look to incorporate explain vulnerability in with GitLab Duo chat. There was like a business decision to move to GA without GitLab Duo chat being context aware. So from a vulnerability detail page, you would click on the chat button and it wouldn't know that you're looking at a vulnerability. So I'm trying to look at, okay, how might we let the user know that there's this like hidden /explain_vuln command they can type in the chat, without like, you know, we can't say that that's the most important feature because we don't know what page they're on yet, but I just want it to be made available. And should we continue to have calls to actions within the context of the page, like what Dan shared this morning? I think it was Dan. in the, okay, I don't know where it went. It was in some channel this morning.
About the chat-based interaction.
About it was from X, I guess we're supposed to call
Yes.
it now. Yeah, where that designer was talking about, it's easy to say that, the chat button is always available for all of the things, for like AI is available to do all of the things, but you're not really, you need more of like a trigger than that in the context of what you're looking at. I liked her example of, maybe you'll go into the chat and say like, what's the capital of Uganda? Like, you might want to play around with it, but you're not really sure what exactly AI can do for you in any specific context. So without it being context aware, um, how do we how do we let people know that these tools are available to them, but also not spam them with it? Like I feel like Google's AI features I'm getting spammed with, and it's like, get out of my way. I know what I'm doing. Like I don't want to use AI for like all of the things. Anyways, I'm just babbling now at this point, but like back to my original point, just knowing like where other features are and where they're headed. I do feel a little bit like in the dark as to where we can take this thing. I don't know if a workshop would be helpful. I'd be happy to be a part of something like that, just to all get together and discuss what we're thinking, because I'm trying to do more like future North Star designs, and I'm interested in seeing where we can take AI in GitLab in general. But yeah, long TLDR, it's hard to know like where features are and where they might be going.
Katie, I don't know if you wanted to pop in and answer that from AI framework perspective. If not, we can like talk a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what you were mentioning, Becca, about like, at some point this icon was purple and now like that's part of the things that I'm trying to resolve. And then I think your second point in terms of like what AI features are available, what's the work in flight, that's something that I'm thinking about as well. Like, how do we resolve that problem? How do we get awareness across? I was thinking an ideation session could be one way to get more awareness. Also, just like, this is my hack. Wait, I'll share my screen. This has been really helpful for me, and maybe I should just make it public in this document that I was just sharing, because the fig gem I was just sharing was actually just my to-do list for myself, and then I turned it into this. But I just took the heuristics and I have all of the AI features here, and it's actually been super helpful. So I wonder if there's also just like small steps we can take to like better get awareness. Like I could probably just publish this file.
Yeah, that would be really helpful.
That would be great. I had added the link to the heuristic spreadsheets, which takes you to all of the Figma files. So Kate, if you want to share that file there, actually you could probably just share it in the same comment that I left. That's really nice because that does it for you really quickly into one Figma file. And then I also linked to the GitLab Dual Enterprise Maturity epic. There's an epic there. There's all kinds of stuff, but that's where you can go if you want to see some of the info from the product perspective, like the roadmap info. It's not going to get you any of the pajamas or the like, how are these designed info. But yeah, so I think I hope people will keep giving feedback like this. Let us know what you want to see in the framework. We're just starting, so that's why it's not there. But these are exactly the kinds of things that Katie's working on. For now, I said yesterday, like we have to overshare because we don't have these tools available to us. So that's why we have the channels where we can kind of just overshare with each other and let each other know what we're working on and doing, and it'll become more codified as we go.
Yeah, that actually just reminds me, we just had the office hours before this call and we were talking about how to make them more valuable, and we kind of settled on an agenda of like some base questions like what's challenging for you this week, but also like everyone go and share your screen and just share what you're working on in a very informal way as also a way to gain awareness. Today we just did like everyone on the call just said like 1 or 2 sentences, and already from that there were like a couple of connections made that like weren't before. So I think that's valuable as well.
I have for that point regarding context, knowing context and not knowing context. I hope that we can fix that technically so that the chat is aware of the things that the users expected aware, and basically will expect it's aware of everything they see, and even more, right? Everything they have access to. And while we don't fully understand what the use cases are around each of those contexts, I realize that this application exists. It has to know everything. And I'm hoping that once we support that, we'll also get more differentiated feedback. Right now, the feedback that we're getting is it doesn't know anything. I'm unhappy. And we don't learn what they would have liked to have, right? And if we support all these contexts, even at a poor level, even if the experience is poor, we'll get more detailed information. I wanted to ask about a commit and I got a very short answer or whatever. And then we'll know statistically, what are the contexts that they're actually using, and what are the contexts that they're complaining about, and what are they actually asking. And then we can decide, okay, let's dig into that problem of, for instance, use cases around commits, and then we can focus on that. Well, right now we have very little information of what they want to do. So I hope my hope is not being disappointed and the engineers can figure it out. I think it should be technically possible to make that context available.
I think I'm supposed to have 20 minutes. Should I keep going with the agenda, Emily?
I think so. We don't have we don't have anyone else, and we have 12 or so minutes. So I think it's a great conversation. Let's continue.
Okay, cool. My next question to the group is what would be helpful in a pattern library? And I think that Vitika is not on the call, so I'll read her comment. Does the format for feeding a prompt count as a pattern? There are features being designed for Duo, root cause analysis, and more that were originally designed to be context specific. Post-integration, they can be accessed from anywhere. We have arrived at a way on how to feed the prompt and generate an output so that the experience appears uniform irrespective of which page you perform the action from /command, like /RCA job name. Would be good to see a standard documented for this. Yeah, so I think Vitika brought this up, Becca brought it up, Nick also brought it up as a read only. So I think definitely something I can focus on. Heather, do you want to vocalize?
Yeah, sure. Mine is more around just sort of any sort of guidance or patterns around sort of the branding. We have often very limited space and many features. How we communicate that often can't necessarily be done with text. We sometimes have to rely only on icons or a short label. And I think putting thought into that and that would be something if I could refer to, and just even having best practices of like when we use certain icons or what icons are able to be changed could be useful for me. So an example is just from the IDEs, we've got a status bar. So we've got multiple AI features in an IDE. So you got like dual chat, you've got code suggestions. Currently our status bar shows the same icon for code suggestions as dual chat. If I disable code suggestions, it appears that multiple AI features are disabled because they're using the exact same branding. So yeah, I just thought that would be really helpful in a pattern library, just sort of having some best practices around how we handle features, like branding at even different screen sizes or different, basically any guidance would be super helpful. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Austin and I actually had a chat about this exact issue that you were describing today. And yeah, you know, should we have bespoke icons for certain features? Like, I think that's IDE specific case, but yeah, it is a little bit confusing that two separate features have the same icon, and also the functionality of the icon, like what it does, is different. So yeah, I fully see the need for that.
I think I don't have to write this down, but I think Austin can help with that because it has this dovetail into some of the user settings, things that he's working on, which is like, how do I know if something is working, or something AI is working? So
Yeah, yeah. Okay, never talked about this more too. I was actually literally just playing with some icon ideas around the IDE, but there is going to be some sort of conversation, or maybe it would be more of a battle around like what can represent GitLab Duo, because I think it has become just known as like the Tanuki with sparkles. But because things can be delineated differently, say chat as an example, it is hard to delineate code suggestions from chat with just simply the same icon. But the pushback would be, well, customers or users have come to know that the Sparkle Tanuki is the thing that means AI. And it's like, yes, but we might need to consider how we could be more specific. But that may not be necessarily a conversation we win. So you might have to work around those constraints depending on how we want to brand Duo and present it in the UI.
Yeah, that's actually reminds me like a lot of anecdotes I see. I see customers and also internal staff say GitLab Duo, meaning the chat, and then they describe other features as the feature name, like merge request summary. So there's also some probably like we need to sort that out as well. Like how do we refer to it in the product? Is GitLab Duo everything? Like things like this.
Yeah, like I initially thought like root cause analysis was like Duo Chat, and I was like, oh, it's not Duo Chat, but like it also comes out in a drawer similar to Duo Chat. It looks almost like identical, except it's not. So yeah, little things like that are sometimes nuances that we know, but that users may not necessarily pick up on, and they just call it Duo Chat because that's just what they think it is.
Mike has the next point.
Sure. First, fully recognizing the order of magnitude more difficult this would be, but in what would be helpful about a pattern library is the more forward-looking it is. I've seen designers do a great job of, if components are available or patterns are available, we take those up. We usually see the divergence in patterns and design when something isn't available, and in that moment you have to innovate. So just the more future looking we can be in it, not necessarily designing for what we need today, but looking forward to see where we think we're going, what we're going to need, having those patterns available before we need them, makes them available at the exact right moment that you do need them. So designers are pulling things off the shelf rather than inventing things as you're going along. Recognizing predicting the future is difficult, and therefore making this even more difficult, but an aspirational goal.
Yeah, I think the abstraction of the patterns, like the AI and I are ideating on something, or the AI and I are co-creating, or I'm reviewing something the AI did, like I think we could come up with high level like abstractions or wireframes that highlight the usability UX side of it. In terms of like actual sticker sheet, I feel like that's only useful when the thing exists in real life. And we kind of encountered that at the very beginning of this effort. We did work on some design pattern categorization, like AI is embedded in the page, AI is a chat. And I think that Figma file quickly collected dust because it was a little bit too far away from reality. So yeah, it's about finding that balance.
Yep.
I would just add, like Pedro was working on Duo workflow, which is sort of a lot more forward looking than some of the other like AI powered capabilities in the app right now. And so I think that's really good feedback. And as we work on dual workflow, there will be like emerging pattern needs. And then hopefully those can be the things that are the more forward-looking patterns that end up in the library.
I have a quick question about future looking. Like, do we have a vision of what Duo incorporated in workflows looks like eventually? Because as I'm thinking through this from like the perspective of explain and resolve vulnerability, I don't know if we have an idea yet as to whether or not we're going to have those like call to actions within the page, or if everything is just going to be like, oh, people should know that everything can happen in GitLab Duo chat and that button is visible in the header. So from any page, like I'd be curious to hear about if there is a vision or if there's one being created, because it's kind of both, right? Like we need those like incremental components and the sticker sheet or whatever you want to call it. But then I also am just very curious as to like if there is a vision yet. There may not be, which is totally fine.
I think that's kind of what Pedro is working on. I guess the difference between what we're working on, like the rest of the people in AI, and what Pedro's working on is like we're working on very narrowly scoped features versus Pedro's feature is we automate a lot of a workflow. It follows you through the product, maybe into the IDE, back to the product. And the AI does a lot of things on your behalf. So it's like a more complex interaction. And I think that's maybe the long-term vision, but it's also very early days at the moment. But Pedro shared a really good video overview in the UX AI integration sometime late last week. So maybe that would be a good thing for everyone to have a look at.
Yeah, I missed that. So thanks for pointing that out.
Okay, Slack is like a fire hose of information.
Keeping an eye on time, it looks like we're about 2 minutes out. So I think maybe we should wrap up the conversation here, but there's a few other points in the talk if people want to read those async and respond async. Thanks so much for sharing, Katie, and this was a great conversation, everyone.